There's a moment most people don't talk about. It's when you realize that effort isn't the problem anymore. You've tried working harder. You've tried being more disciplined. You've tried doing everything right. And none of it feels wasted. But none of it feels transformative either. Your life improves slowly, incrementally, almost politely. More responsibility. A bit more money. A bit more stability. Yet the core feeling doesn't change. You're still constrained by time. Still dependent on structures you don't control. Still stuck optimizing a life that doesn't really expand. And that's when doubt creeps in. Not loud doubt. Quiet doubt. You start wondering if this is just how things are supposed to feel. If adulthood is just about managing obligations efficiently. If ambition is something you're supposed to grow out of. Because nothing is breaking. Your life works, but it works in a way that keeps you small. This video is not about motivation. It's not about hustle. And it's definitely not about shortcuts. It's about understanding why effort stops being enough once you're inside the wrong structure. And why so many competent, responsible people mistake that moment for a personal failure. At the beginning of any journey, hard work creates visible progress. You study and your knowledge increases. You work and your income rises. You put in effort and life responds. That's why the idea that effort solves everything becomes so deeply ingrained. It worked before. But at a certain point, effort stops creating breakthroughs and starts creating maintenance. Your work no longer builds something new. It keeps something existing from falling apart. You're no longer moving forward. You're holding position. This shift is subtle, which is why so many people miss it. From the outside, it still looks like success. From the inside, it starts feeling repetitive. Your days fill up with tasks that must be done. Your energy goes into preventing problems instead of creating momentum. And because you're good at it, the system reinforces this role. The better you perform, the more indispensable you become. The more indispensable you become, the harder it is to step back and redesign your life. At this stage, working harder doesn't free you. It anchors you. And this is where many competent people make a critical mistake. They interpret stagnation as a signal to push even more. Longer hours, more responsibility, more optimization. But effort, applied to a structure that doesn't scale, only makes the structure heavier. Not better. Responsible people are trained to honor commitment. You show up. You deliver. You don't abandon things halfway. And those are good traits. But when applied to the wrong structure, they quietly trap you. You stay longer than you should. You tolerate friction longer than necessary. You assume that if something is difficult, it must be building character. So when the returns start flattening, you don't question the system. You question yourself. You think maybe you're not being patient enough. Maybe you're expecting too much. Maybe this is just how mature life works. And because you're competent, you adapt. You learn to operate efficiently inside limitations you never chose. You optimize routines. You manage stress. You normalize dissatisfaction. This is how people end up emotionally invested in paths that don't lead anywhere meaningful. Not because they're blind, but because they're loyal. Loyal to effort. Loyal to responsibility. Loyal to an identity that says quitting or changing direction means failure. Meanwhile, the system doesn't need to convince you anymore. You convince yourself, and years can pass like this. Not in crisis. Not in collapse. Just in a quiet loop where your skills keep growing, but your life doesn't expand. When stagnation becomes impossible to ignore, the mind looks for relief. And it usually finds the same story. Things will change at the next level. The next promotion. The next raise. The next role with more authority. The next phase of life. This belief is comforting because it doesn't require structural change. You don't have to rethink the game. You just have to keep playing it a little longer. So you tell yourself that once you reach that next milestone, the pressure will ease. You'll have more freedom, more control, more space to breathe. But something strange happens when you get there. The context changes, but the structure doesn't. You still trade time for outcomes. You still depend on decisions you don't control. You still operate inside limits that cap your upside. The responsibilities increase. The expectations rise. The margin for error shrinks. And the sense of relief you were waiting for never really arrives. That's when confusion sets in. Because from the outside, it looks like you're progressing. But from the inside, it feels like the same loop, just at a higher intensity. This is the moment many people realize something important, even if they can't fully articulate it yet. Advancement inside a non-scalable structure doesn't create freedom. It just increases the cost of leaving. And once that cost is high enough, most people stop imagining alternatives altogether. At this point, it becomes clear that the problem isn't effort, intelligence, or discipline. It's structure. Some games reward repetition. Others punish it. In non-scalable games, your value comes from presence. You have to be there. You have to respond. You have to keep things running. If you step away, the system slows down or breaks. That's not a moral problem. It's a design limitation. Scalable games work differently. Value is created up front and reused over time. Decisions compound. Systems keep working even when you're not constantly pushing them. This doesn't mean they're easier. They're often slower at the beginning, more boring, less impressive from the outside. And that's why most people never commit to them. They don't give immediate validation. They don't come with clear titles or applause. They require patience without external proof that you're on the right path. Responsible people struggle here because they were trained to seek confirmation. Good grades, good feedback, clear milestones. Scalable paths rarely give you that early on. So you drift back to what feels productive, even if it doesn't build leverage. This is where clarity matters. Not clarity about what to do next, but clarity about what not to expect from the game you're currently in. Once you understand the limits of a structure, you stop trying to force it to give you something it can't. And that alone removes a massive amount of frustration. If this video resonated, it's probably because it didn't try to excite you. It tried to describe you. People who are stuck in this position aren't confused. They're misaligned. They're applying intelligence, effort, and responsibility to games that can't return what they're looking for. And the most dangerous part is that these games don't feel wrong. They feel normal. They feel respectable. They feel safe. Which is why so many competent people spend years assuming the discomfort is personal. That they should be more grateful, more disciplined, more patient. But the issue was never effort. It was direction. This channel exists to slow things down enough to see that clearly, to help you separate movement from progress, stability from growth, and responsibility from blind loyalty. No promises, no shortcuts, no dramatic exits, just clarity. And clarity is often the first thing people avoid, because once you see the structure clearly, you can't unknow it. If this felt uncomfortably familiar, subscribe. Not because things will change overnight, but because once you stop walking in circles, even slow progress finally starts to matter.